Hi everyone, this is Darren with SimNation. Just doing a quick recap video of the playoffs here at SimNation for WWPF, which is the oldest draft day sports professional football league that we have. It goes all the way back to the beginning of the game. Initially, it was fed by WWCF, which was a bowl-bound league until, of course, Draft Day Sports College Football came along, and then we switched it over to SNCFL, which is the league that's tied to this on the college football side. Lots of history within this league. Playoffs are always an interesting time, and we'll just jump straight in. So I think last video you remember NFC went as planned. San Francisco down New York, Carolina down to Minnesota. So Stewart at San Francisco uh, got a win. Stewart has been to the championship a few times. I think he's been a bridesmaid almost every single time. Carolina has also been to the championship game a lot with Invisible Witness. He's actually won a title. He downed Pittsburgh, I think, in like 2048. And then, of course, most of his losses have come at the hands of Pittsburgh or Oakland. And I think it's about equal. I think they both have contributed to the losses. On the AFC side, it was upset central. New England was shark, got by Pittsburgh, who's me. Great season from New England in the playoffs. They weren't that good in the regular season. Them and Carolina both. San Francisco, of course, had a really good season. Tennessee with Bama got by Oakland, who's Peter. Peter has won 12 championships. He's kind of the goat of the league, right? But Bama managed to not only upset him, but was largely able to beat him by 2 touchdowns. That's pretty impressive. For Bama, it was a really good season. I think he was like 11-5. I think Shark was like 10-6. Um, so both of these two teams had to come from the wild card to get to the conference championships. So New England, if I remember correctly, beat Baltimore, who was a really good CPU team. Tennessee beat Denver, which is Prince, who's a really good coach too. So as we moved into the conference championships, Carolina got the win over Stewart in his San Francisco 49ers. So Invisible will be making, I think it's like I want to say it's like it'll be his sixth title appearance since 2047. So six title appearances, league title appearances in 8 years. That's pretty amazing. So Invisible, great job. Stewart just fell a little bit short. You kind of feel for Nathan Ford a little bit. The guy has been a great running back in the league since he started. And really the only thing that he's missing right now is a championship ring. So you can make the jokes about it. Maybe you should go to Oakland, maybe you should go to Pittsburgh, but I don't ever see that. Nathan is probably going to start and finish his career on San Francisco. But really great job with Stewart. He managed to turn around. The last 2 seasons haven't been friendly to him, but he really has got that team going. And Garcia, the former quarterback out of Florida State, is definitely starting to emerge. On the AFC side, as you can see, Shark got the win over Tennessee in a very close game. Um, Hats off to Shark. This is, I think, the first time he's been in the championship game, if I remember correctly. Um, I think the farthest that he ever got was to the conference championship in 2048, where they lost to the Steelers, who of course would go on to lose to Carolina in that Super Bowl. Hats off to Bama. Great season from the Tennessee Titans. Should be no complaints still. Tennessee really showed up well this year. So what we now have is New England versus Carolina. Um, and I will just say this one's an interesting one. Carolina, of course, is going into this game is 1-4 uh, in the championship game. They beat Pittsburgh, and then of course they lost to Oakland in Pittsburgh both twice. New England has not been in the championship game in a long time. I think that for New England, they are like 1-1 all time in the championship game. I think both were with Frankie, if I remember correctly. Will Frankie run it like 30 years ago in the league? Um, so it's an interesting game in that you have one team that has a title under its belt in Carolina with Invisible Witness, but has sometimes been compared to the Buffalo Bills. And then you have New England, who just hasn't been back in a long time, and Shark will be looking to get his first league title. Um, and again, both of these two teams kind of underperformed this year. While Carolina was the number 2 seed, they were like 11-5, which for Invisible is less than what he's used to. They had a really rough start to the season, but they really came on in the second half of the season. New England kind of was similar. And Shark managed to just really put together a great playoffs. When you think about Shark, he had to go through Baltimore, who is a really good CPU team. He had to go through Pittsburgh, who's the defending champion and was the number 1 seed, and then had to stop Tennessee, who was the hot team coming into the playoffs. So all in all, really good run by New England. The two teams play kind of a similar style where they like to run the ball and throw the ball. They both are using rookie quarterbacks. You have Campbell at Carolina. You have Shank at New England. And they both have really good running backs. Willis is a running back at Carolina. You have LaFleur, who's a running back at New England. So it should be an interesting game. We're going to kind of go through it relatively quick, and I apologize. This was run yesterday, so it is already both coaches already know that they who won, who lost. So does the league. But what we're going to do real quick is kind of just go into the game, and I'm going to show the score, and then I'm going to go straight into box score, and then I'm going to go straight into play-by-play and kind of just take it from there. Um, so game started, and essentially Carolina got a pick six on the first play. So I'm sorry, New England got a pick six on the first play. Will Campbell was looking to throw to Maddox, and right off the get-go, Rosas, I want to say it different, but he picked it off and ran it back for a touchdown. Carolina then started to put together a drive. Carolina is really good at eating clock, despite a sack, and they were helped by a face mask penalty um, from New England. Willis punched it in, and it was 7-7. And then, of course, they kicked it off. And what you see is, again, both these teams are really good at owning clock and driving the clock. You see New England kind of march down the field from the 40 all the way in, and Shank would find Herrera to make it 14-7. Carolina would end up essentially moving again the ball using Willis and Batiste, who are the two running backs. Get helped again by a decent pass, and of course, Rashawn Willis being lost for New England is kind of a game changer because he's one of the better quarterbacks. But on this drive, Carolina would have to settle for field goal. So if you look at it, is there was only really two drives for Carolina, well, three if you count the fact they threw the interception, and then only really one drive for New England in the first quarter. So that kind of shows that both teams are going to try to eat up the clock, especially Carolina. Carolina would get the field goal, be down 14-10. New England would get the ball back, and then essentially quickly go down the field and score. Again, Herrera to Shank, that's a common theme across the season. New England would jump to a 21-10 lead, and then you would see Carolina again start at the 7-minute mark and take it down the field to the 3-minute mark, and again they would score with Campbell finding Maddox, who's one of their top wide receivers outside of Shoemaker. Excuse me. And it would be 21-17. They would kick the ball off, and then New England would just quickly turn around and get a quick score off LaFleur going 45 yards to make it 28-17. Uh, at the end of the quarter, essentially, Carolina couldn't get down the field, go 3 and out. and then New England would just choose to hold the 28-17 lead. So going into at the end of the first half, Shank was having a really good game. Carolina not an insurmountable lead. They're only down by 11. They can quickly turn that around. So they kick the ball. New England gets the ball, but they're not able really to get it moving. They get a first down, but then go three and they go essentially 4 and out and give Carolina the ball at Carolina's 20. Unlike the previous quarter, Carolina just comes out and starts throwing the ball. Campbell finds Null, and then Willis runs for 13 yards, and then he gets a 30-yard run to make it 28-23. Um, and they try to go for the 2-point conversion, and it fails, so it's still 28-23. They kick the ball off, and New England starts to try to control the clock. You see they get the ball with 8:58 left, and then they drive down the field with eating up about 7 minutes uh, and settle for a field goal to make it 31-23. At this point, New England's in pretty good control. They're controlling the clock, which is what they want. They get a kickoff through the back. Again, another really costly defensive pass interference helps move the ball a little bit. And you can start to see that Carolina is trying to drive down the field. They ultimately do get the touchdown after a long completion to Jack from Campbell to Jackson. And then Campbell again finds King, who is their tight end, for 11 yards and a touchdown. This time they're successful and they tie the game up at 31 all. So going into the top of the fourth, it is a tied score. LaFleur gets a good return, takes it out to the New England 34. And then, of course, Shank gets sacked, and then he gets sacked again, fumbles the ball, and ends up turning the ball over to Carolina on the New England 2. That's not going to end well for whatever you're going to do. And of course, Carolina punches it in 2 plays later out of the Wildcat using Edward Fulcher, who's a quarterback out of NC State. So Carolina takes the lead for the first time, and it's 38-31 with 11:27 to go. Lots of time left, by the way. And so New England starts to move the ball down the field. They get to the 48. And then again, Shank gets sacked by Wesley, who's one of the best defensive ends in the league. They're forced to punt. And Carolina is going to try to run the ball and try to hopefully run the clock out. Willis, unfortunately, is stripped, and New England gets the ball back at the Carolina 34. And that's great field position for them. They should be able to do it. And they start moving the ball, but Shank is picked off by Baskins uh, and with 250, and that normally is going to seal the deal. But with the ball now being at the New England 22, Carolina decides to kind of push towards the end zone, and they get another score to make it 45-31. New England will have the ball with 2 minutes left. Not entirely insurmountable, just not likely. And of course, with 52 seconds left, after Shank just kind of goes off, finding Herrera again for a touchdown, New England makes it 45-38. They try to onside kick it, but it's picked up by Carolina, and Carolina nails the ball at the end of the game. Um, so great game. And then if you look at the box score, you can kind of see this, but uh, Patriots did a pretty good job of controlling the ball in the second half. Carolina got a little bit more fast in the second half than they were in the first half. You can see Campbell had a really good game with 339 yards, 17 of 22. Only got sacked twice. Shank had a good game too, with completing almost 80% of passes, 308 yards, 3 touchdowns, 1 interception. But he did get sacked a little bit more, so his jersey was a little dirtier. You see LaFleur had a pretty good game. Willis had a good game as well. Herrera had a really good game, 6 receptions, 3 of which were touchdowns. Schumacher helped move the ball consistently, but Willis had 3 touchdowns as well. And then what you see on defense, of course, is the Rosas touchdown. And then you see that both teams actually were doing really good. So Timothy Campbell ends up being the player of the game. Negrete, who is the strong safety, ends up being the defensive player of the game. I don't know if I really agree with that. I think Rosas probably was the player of the game, defensive player of the game. He had a pretty good game as well. So Carolina wins it, which gives Invisible his second title, and now moves him to, I think, 2-4 all time in the title game, and is just caps off a really interesting season for Carolina. Shark definitely showed up well in the game. I know he's hoping to be back next year, and I think New England has a quarterback that can help them get back next year, but we'll just have to wait and see. From a perspective of who's probably going to win the awards, I'd be shocked if Johnson doesn't win the league MVP award. He's had a pretty good season, but of course he does have to go against Torres. I think there's 7 votes in right now. I think Sousa is the odds-on favorite right now to win the defensive MVP. The league MVP normally also gets the offensive MVP. I think with 6 votes in, right now the leader is Adam Johnson. Torres, who's the New York Jets wide receiver, had a really good season. He broke a league record that goes back to the beginning of the league in 2000. So the league record stood for like 55 years before it was broken by Torres. But just in general, Adam Johnson, the Oakland quarterback, I mean, he had 75 touchdowns. That falls short of the league record, but it's still pretty impressive. And then, of course, he threw for 6,085 yards. It may seem less than the others, but he also threw the ball a lot less. The other person in the running, of course, is Nathan Ford. I mentioned him earlier, where he failed to break the 2,000 mark, but he still had a really good year. And I think he had quite a few receptions as well. Yeah, 291 yards, 6 touchdowns there to go with his 23 touchdowns. So he had over 2,100 yards of total offense. So it'll be interesting to see who wins it. We'll know tomorrow night when it runs. But all in all, great season. Call outs to Invisible Witness. He developed the graphic for this. And also just on winning the championship. Great season from Shark, especially in the playoffs with his deep run. Bama throughout the season had a really good showing as well. Hats off to him. And of course, Barry didn't make it out of the wild card, but the LA Rams had a good season as well. Stewart got back to the conference championships and just fell a little bit short. But it looks like San Francisco's back. And then it'll be interesting to see what happens with Pittsburgh and Oakland. Neither team is used to being home as early as they were, so expect some changes there. But all in all, it was a great season, and thank you all for following. We will be moving to 2025, the 2025 version on Tuesday. If you want to join the league, there's some really great teams out there still available. Let me know. The Discord link is in the channel. Otherwise, have a great holiday, and let me know if there's anything you want me to cover. Thanks.